A couple things we're going to talk about real quick before we go on with actually printing the specialty fabrics is to describe what it takes to get to this point of actually printing. And I know we're all supposed to be printers here. Some of you may have a short time in the industry. Some of them you might have been doing this for 20 or more years. But what I wanted to describe is what is a plastisol, and that's what we're going to be printing with here is a plastisol. Plastisol is a PVC resin with an oil like a plasticizer. The resin is like a very, very fine powder. It just dissipates as you rub it into your fingers. It's a very like a flour. I describe ink as a dough. Let's say you've got dough that's kind of like a tortilla, it's a flatbread, and then you have dough that blows up into a donut, and that'd be like a puff ink or something like that. So if you think about inks that way, it kind of makes sense. When you have oils, plasticizer is what makes it elastic or flexible, and we kind of make it think like a water or the milk or the liquids in a dough. And then when I describe inks as in a color, I kind of describe it as a flavor of the dough. And if you start thinking about it that way, it kind of makes a little bit more sense. And that's how we make the product in 700-gallon batches in our factory. Very large tanks, and we add the flour or the resin, we add the liquids, and then we have the specialty ingredients that make it puff, or it could be a glitter or any other kind of product. We kind of make it more stretchy or less stretchy or more of a harder durometer. So we make these things in 700-gallon batches. And what we do is, I'm going to describe the ink as, let's say this is a drop of ink. This is going to represent the liquid part of it, okay, the oils and the liquid parts. And then we're going to have the resins, and these are the powdered resins, very fine, very, very fine. And then inside that there might be some additives of a filler or some other kind of dry product. But what's going to happen is, everybody knows about flash curing between colors in a production or on a manual here. What happens is that at around 180 degrees, the resin actually starts to absorb the liquids and they start to swell, okay, on a micro level. So they start to blow up and become dry to the touch, and that's all we're trying to do when we flash, is dry to the touch. We don't want to cure the ink completely. What happens if you cure the ink completely is that you might have intercoat adhesion problems between the two colors, that the one color on top of the other. So you don't want to, you just want to dry to the touch, not fully cure the ink. So again, the resin starts to swell and it becomes a little dry to the touch at about 180 degrees, and that changes between some different ink lines, but approximately that. And then at 320 degrees it becomes a solid, and it actually becomes a solid. There's very, very little VOCs or organic or volatile organic properties that go out the stack. You might have a little bit, but very, very little compared to, let's say, a vinyl ink or a solvent-based ink. Another thing we want to talk about is that we all know about the meshes. And I'm going through this fast, and if you have any questions, please, because probably most of you know about screen printing, so I don't want to like talk down to you, but I want to make sure that everybody realizes what we're doing with this. Meshes come in a lot of different mesh counts, from 25, I've used up to 420. That's usually UV coating on CD printing. But 25, let's say that's going to print glitters and fine coarse particle flakes and glitters and sparkles and stuff like that. We go to 40, 60, 80, 110, 125, 140, 160, 180. Depending on the manufacturer, there's some in between them. We go to 200, 220, 260, 300. There might be a 280 in there, 305. And 355 is really the finest we would probably go in fabrics. Now what I'm saying, what I want to let you guys know is that in between all these, you've got a couple different thread counts, but you might have a choice depending on your mesh manufacturer, that let's say you chose a 110. Few people know that in a 110 there might be 3 to 4 different mesh diameters of the thread available to you. Thinner threads may break easier, but there's actually a larger percentage of opening area if you use a thinner thread than if you use a thicker thread. And a thicker thread will hold up more tension, but it's also got smaller open areas, so less ink will pass through. And some of the manufacturers sell probably the middle of the road. They sell more of it, so they probably only offer one. But if you look at the mesh charts, if you go online to a mesh manufacturer, you'll probably see a mesh chart, and you'll find out that they probably make 3 different kinds of this: a thin thread, a medium thread, and a thicker thread, and that presents more of an open area. And what I'm trying to get at is, it'll pass more ink easier, especially when you're doing manual printing. But on an automatic printing, when you're doing fine halftones and stuff up in this level, you could actually get more white ink and it'll be brighter by using a thinner thread. Again, it may pop easier, but you're going to get more production out of it also.